The Galactic assembly chambers had never been so quiet. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species sat in stunned silence as the holographic display showed another solar system going dark. The crystalline swarm had consumed yet another civilization, leaving nothing but stripped planets and broken dreams in its wake. High Chancellor Vexterra, her iridescent scales dulled with exhaustion, gripped the edges of her podium. The Mersian leader had watched her people's colonies fall one by one over the past decade. Now, as head of the assembly, she was forced to witness the same pattern repeat across the galaxy. The Hexadrite advance cannot be stopped through conventional means, she announced, her translator struggling to convey the deep despair in her native clicks and whistles. Our most advanced weaponry shatters against their lattice shields. Our fastest ships cannot outmaneuver their quantum filaments. Our strongest alliances. She paused, mandibles trembling. We are falling, one by one. In the oppressive silence that followed, Supreme Admiral Koth of the Zentari Defense Force activated his speaking crystal. The massive arthropoid's electromagnetic voice rippled through the chamber. Then we must seek unconventional means. There are species we have not yet approached for aid. Nervous murmurs filled the chamber. Everyone knew which species he meant. The ones the assembly had deliberately ignored for centuries, declaring them too primitive and volatile for inclusion in galactic society. The humans. Vexterra's translator crackled with disbelief. They barely have unified planetary governance. Their technology is crude. They still use combustion engines and projectile weapons. And yet, Koth countered, they have survived over 40 attempts at self-extinction. Their history is written in nuclear fire and environmental catastrophe, yet they endure. They wage war with a creativity that borders on madness. The holographic display shifted to show a small blue-green planet in an unremarkable spiral arm. Earth. The assembly's anthropologists had studied the humans from afar for centuries, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as they lurched from crisis to crisis, somehow emerging stronger each time. They are barbarians, protested Ambassador Yill of the Quantum Collective, their photonic form flickering with agitation. They still celebrate their warrior cultures. They turn everything into weapons. Their entertainment media is obsessed with conflict and violence. Exactly. Koth's electromagnetic voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. The Hexadrite consumed through perfect order, through crystalline precision. Perhaps what we need is a species that thrives in chaos. Security footage began playing across the chamber's displays. Humans fighting wars, yes, but also humans diving into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans using primitive tools to perform medical miracles. Humans reaching their moon with computers less powerful than a modern food synthesizer. Humans turning their own pathogens into cures. They are dangerous, Vexterra acknowledged. But the Hexadrite are extinction made manifest. Perhaps. Her scales shifted to a deep blue of contemplation. Perhaps we need dangerous allies. The debate raged for days. The assembly had strict protocols about uplifting primitive species, protocols put in place after several catastrophic attempts in the distant past. But as more systems fell to the crystalline swarm, as more civilizations were reduced to stellar debris, the choice became clear: break the protocols or watch the galaxy die. The decision to contact Earth passed by a narrow margin. Now came the difficult part: choosing an emissary. Most species found humans physically unsettling. Their soft bodies, their constant moisture, their bizarre facial expressions. Eventually, the task fell to Dr. Ixel, a Mersian cynoanthropologist who had secretly studied human culture for decades. The contact site was chosen carefully, a remote military facility in a region humans called Nevada. As Ixel's diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, she observed the primitive defensive installations tracking her approach. The humans had detected them long before they revealed themselves. Impressive, given their technological level. The landing zone was surrounded by human military vehicles. Primitive projectile weapons were aimed at her ship, though their bearers must have known such weapons would be useless against assembly technology. Ixal admired their determination, even in the face of overwhelming technological superiority. Through the ship's sensors, she watched the humans react to her appearance. Their vital signs showed fear, excitement, aggression, sometimes all at once. Such emotional complexity was rare among assembly species. Most found it disturbing. But against the perfect, emotionless advance of the Hexadrite, perhaps such chaos was exactly what the galaxy needed. As the ship's doors opened and the Nevada desert heat hit her scales, Ixal prepared to deliver the message that would change human history. People of Earth, we need your help. The galaxy is dying, and your species may be our last hope. The human leader stepped forward, a female they called General Sarah Chen, her uniform adorned with symbols of rank and achievement. Her response would be studied by xenohistorians for centuries to come. You know, you could have just called ahead. We've been waiting for someone to finally admit they've been watching us. In that moment, Ixal realized that perhaps they had underestimated these humans in more ways than one. They weren't just primitive warriors or chaos-embracing survivors. They were something far more dangerous. They were ready. The assembly's diplomatic vessel looked oddly delicate among the massive aircraft hangars of Area 51. General Chen watched as teams of engineers swarmed around it, their instruments providing readings that would have been incomprehensible just days ago. The aliens had expected awe, perhaps even worship of their advanced technology. Instead, they got methodical disassembly and analysis. Your people are very thorough, Dr. Ixal observed, her scales shifting to a pattern that Chen's newly provided translator indicated as concerned fascination. You show up telling us the galaxy is dying, then hand us technical specifications for faster-than-light travel. Chen replied, sipping her coffee. Did you expect us to frame them? The data package the assembly had provided was meant to be a gesture of good faith, a demonstration of what humanity might achieve with proper guidance. Within hours, research teams worldwide had begun identifying potential improvements to the assembly's perfect designs. Inefficient use of space, Dr. Patel had declared, pointing at the antimatter containment systems. Look at all these redundancies. We can get the same safety margins with half the shielding if we layer graphene composites instead of using pure neutronium. The assembly observers were horrified. Their designs had been refined over millennia. Yet here were these primitives, suggesting alterations based on materials they'd only theoretically worked with until now. Worse, their suggestions were working. We need to discuss the Hexadrite threat, Ixal pressed, trying to steer the conversation back to the immediate crisis. Their next advance will reach your solar system within months. Chen nodded to her aide, who activated a holographic display. Crude by assembly standards, but functional. We've been analyzing the combat footage you provided. Your fleet formations are beautiful, mathematically perfect. That's the problem. Now it was Ixal's turn to be confused. Perfect formations maximize defensive coverage and offensive capability. This is basic military doctrine. Basic and predictable, Chen countered. The Hexadrate's crystalline nature doesn't just shape their technology, it shapes their thinking. They analyze patterns and respond with perfect counterattacks. You've been playing their game, fighting with logic against an enemy that defines logic. The general gestured, and the display showed new simulations. Earth ships, built with a hybrid of human ingenuity and assembly technology, moving in seemingly chaotic patterns. We don't need to defeat their logic. We need to break it. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Assembly engineers watched in horror as humans modified their elegant designs with what they considered crude adaptations. Weapon systems were jury-rigged, safety margins reduced to gain performance advantages, and worst of all, from the assembly's perspective, humans kept insisting on manual overrides for everything. Automated systems are more efficient, protested Chief Engineer Zix of the Quantum Collective. Human reaction times are far too slow. Until the Hexadrate hack your automation, countered Flight Lieutenant Maria Santos, fresh from a simulator run. Sometimes you need human intuition to do the impossible. The impossible came sooner than expected. A Hexadrite scout force, detecting the unusual activity around Earth, decided to investigate. 3 crystalline ships, each capable of destroying a small moon, emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter. The assembly representatives prepared for a fighting retreat. The human response was something else entirely. Launch the Dicey Initiative, Chen ordered. Project Deep Impact Chaotic Engagement had been conceived, designed, and built in less than a month, a pace that shocked the assembly observers. The Hexadrate ships approached in perfect formation, their crystalline surfaces refracting the distant sunlight. They encountered no resistance until they passed Mars. Then space itself seemed to go mad. Thousands of small objects, barely larger than satellites, suddenly activated. The assembly recognized their own gravity-dry technology, miniaturized and stripped down to nearly unsafe levels. But instead of attacking, these drones began generating seemingly random gravitational pulses. The Hexadrate formation faltered as their perfect spatial calculations were disrupted by gravitational noise. Their crystalline sensors, designed to detect and counter known weapon signatures, were overwhelmed by the chaos of overlapping gravity fields. Now, Chen commanded, and Earth's first hybrid warships dropped their stealth fields. They were ugly by assembly standards, functional tubes bristling with weapons, looking more like orbital construction platforms than proper warships. They fought just as ugly. Instead of elegant energy beams or precision torpedo spreads, the Earth ships launched what appeared to be mining charges. The Hexadrate's predictive algorithms failed to mark them as threats until it was too late. The charges detonated, not with destructive force, but with carefully calibrated resonance frequencies. The crystalline ships began to vibrate. The assembly observers watched in shock as hairline fractures appeared in their supposedly impervious hulls. The Hexadrate, encountering a form of attack they had never seen, attempted to adapt. But their responses were based on logical progressions, and there was nothing logical about humanity's tactics. Basic material science, Dr. Paddle explained later, as they examined the crystalline debris. Everything has a resonance frequency, even living crystal. The victory was small in galactic terms, just 3 scout ships. But it proved what humanity had argued. Conventional tactics wouldn't win this war. As news of the battle spread through assembly channels, more species began arriving at Earth, not to offer guidance, but to learn. Perhaps, Ixel admitted, watching teams of human engineers excitedly examine captured Hexadrate technology. We were wrong about what constitutes advancement. Your species doesn't just embrace chaos. You weaponize it. Chen smiled, an expression that still unnerved most assembly species. That's not even our most dangerous quality. She paused, making sure she had Ixel's full attention. We're also very, very good at teaching others how to do what we do. The assembly had hoped to find a weapon against the Hexadrate. Instead, they found something far more powerful, a species that could teach the galaxy how to think differently. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the crystalline threat emerged, the assembly felt something new: hope. They're not just crystal. Dr. Sarah Patel stood before the combined Assembly Human Science Council, her holographic presentation showing microscopic scans of Hexadrate debris. They're a crystalline quantum computer network. Each ship, each drone, each piece is part of a vast distributed consciousness. The assembly representatives shifted uncomfortably. For months, their best minds had worked alongside human scientists to understand their enemy. But while assembly researchers focused on analyzing Hexadrate technology, humans had asked a different question: what made them think? Their perfection is their weakness, Patel continued. Their entire civilization is built on quantum coherence, perfect alignment, perfect communication, perfect synchronization. That's why they're so powerful and so vulnerable. Admiral Chen, recently promoted to coordinate Earth's defensive forces, leaned forward. Explain it like I'm not a quantum physicist, Doctor. They're like a galaxy-sized Bose-Einstein condensate, Paddle said, then caught herself. Sorry, think of them like a choir, singing in perfect harmony. Every crystal, every ship, every particle vibrating in perfect sync. That's the source of their power, but it's also their weakness. One wrong note. The implications rippled through the chamber. The assembly species had always viewed the hexadrite as invincible because of their perfect coordination. Humans saw it as a critical vulnerability. We've already proven we can disrupt their coherence locally, Chen mused, referring to the successful defense of Earth. But they adapt quickly. Each encounter teaches them to counter our methods. Because we've been thinking too small. Patel's eyes gleamed with the intensity that her assembly colleagues had learned meant either breakthrough or catastrophe. We don't need to fight their ships. We need to break their symphony. The plan that emerged over the next weeks was typically human. Ambitious, dangerous, and just crazy enough to work. Assembly engineers worked alongside human teams to modify their gravity drive technology into something new. Quantum phase disruptors. You realize, High Chancellor Vexterra cautioned during one planning session, if this fails, it could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. If we fail, Chen countered, there won't be any space-time left to worry about. The hexadrite don't just consume worlds. They consume possibility itself, forcing everything into their perfect pattern. The first test of the phase disruptors nearly ended in disaster. The quantum feedback almost crystallized half of Mars. But humans, true to form, saw the near catastrophe as valuable data. They adjusted, adapted, and tried again. The assembly was learning too, though not just about technology. They watched in fascination as humans demonstrated their most remarkable trait, the ability to function in apparent chaos. Your species thrives on imperfection, Ixel observed, watching a team of engineers deliberately introduce random variables into their quantum calculations. You don't just accept it, you embrace it. Perfect systems are brittle systems, replied Dr. James Chen, the Admiral's brother and lead theorist on human assembly hybrid technologies. Nature doesn't do perfect. Evolution, consciousness, creativity. They all require a little noise in the signal. As their understanding of the hexadrite grew, so did the scope of the plan. It wasn't enough to disrupt their coherence in one battle or one sector. They needed to break the hexadrite's quantum harmony across the entire galaxy. It's like introducing a virus, Patel explained to the War Council. But instead of attacking their systems, we're attacking the very thing that makes them what they are, their perfect synchronization. The logistics were staggering. They would need thousands of phase disruptors, precisely calibrated yet deliberately imperfect, deployed across strategic points in space. The timing would have to be perfect, yet include controlled elements of chaos. The assembly fleet will coordinate the primary attack, Admiral Chen detailed. Draw their attention, make them commit their forces in traditional battle patterns. Meanwhile, our ships will deploy the disruptors in seemingly random patterns. Random, questioned Supreme Admiral Koff. How can we achieve strategic objectives with random deployments? Chen smiled. Who said they're actually random? Humans are very good at making chaos look random while hiding deeper patterns. Ask any magician. The term had to be explained to the assembly representatives, the concept of entertainment based on deliberate deception being foreign to most species. But as they understood, they began to appreciate the layers of humanity's approach to warfare. The final piece came from an unexpected source. The Quantum Collective, studying human music theory, discovered ways to use the phase disruptors to create constructive interference patterns, a galaxy-spanning opera of chaos that would shatter the hexadrite's perfect harmony. It's beautiful, in a way, Ixel reflected, studying the deployment simulations. You're not just fighting them. You're teaching the galaxy a new song. That's the thing about humanity, Chen replied, watching the combined fleet prepare for what might be their final battle. We've never believed in perfect harmony. Life is jazz. It's the improvisation that makes it worth living. As the fleet made final preparations, Chen received a message from Earth. Her daughter had just given birth, new life, entering the galaxy at its most dangerous moment. Looking at the image of her granddaughter, Chen felt the weight of their mission even more keenly. They weren't just fighting to preserve the galaxy. They were fighting to preserve its right to be imperfect, to evolve, to change. The Hexadrite offered perfect order, but humanity understood a deeper truth. The universe needed its chaos. The attack would launch tomorrow. In the quiet before the storm, Chen found herself humming an old Earth tune, its deliberate dissonance a reminder of what they were fighting for. Around her, she noticed assembly members unconsciously swaying to the irregular rhythm, perhaps understanding for the first time the power of imperfection. Operation Dissonance began not with a bang, but with silence. Thousands of ships, assembly, human, and hybrid designs, hung motionless in the void. The combined fleet had gathered in the shadows of a dead star system, its planets long ago stripped to crystalline husks by the Hexadrite. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Prometheus, Earth's first true capital ship. The vessel represented everything humanity had learned over the past year. Assembly technology merged with human ingenuity, perfect engineering deliberately flawed to create unpredictable advantages. Phase disruptors report ready, Lieutenant Santos announced. All ships confirmed deployment protocols. The plan was unprecedented in its scope. While the main fleet engaged the Hexadrite in conventional battle, specially modified stealth ships would seed thousands of quantum phase disruptors across key gravitational nodes. Each device was designed to introduce minute imperfections into the Hexadrite's quantum lattice. Message from High Chancellor Vexterra. Communications reported. The assembly fleet is in position. Chen took a deep breath. Send the signal. All ships, execute Operation Dissonance. The battle began exactly as the Hexadrite would predict. The assembly fleet, maintaining their traditional perfect formations, engaged the crystalline armada in a dozen sectors simultaneously. The enemy responded with mathematical precision, their ships moving in flawless geometric patterns. But something was different. Among the assembly ships, human vessels darted in seemingly random patterns. Their movements appeared chaotic, even reckless, but each maneuver was carefully calculated to disrupt the Hexadrite's predictive algorithms. They're responding, Dr. Petal reported from her science station. Their battlefield coherence is dropping by 0.3%. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the Hexadrite adjusted their patterns to counter the human ships, gaps appeared in their previously impenetrable formations. Through these gaps, stealth vessels slipped through, each carrying dozens of phase disruptors. The Hexadrite noticed, of course. Their crystalline sensors detected the stealth ships despite their advanced camouflage. But by design, these ships appeared to be a minor threat compared to the main fleet engagement. First wave of disruptors activated, Santos announced. Quantum interference patterns establishing. On the tactical display, subtle ripples began appearing in spacetime itself. The phase disruptors weren't just affecting the Hexadrite ships. They were introducing imperfections into the very quantum fabric that the crystalline beings used for communication and coherence. The enemy responded with overwhelming force, their ships converging on the detected disruptors. But this too was part of the plan. Each attempted containment forced them to extend their quantum network, making them more vulnerable to the growing interference. Second and third waves activating, Paddle reported. Quantum coherence dropping across all observed sectors. The Hexadrite's response was devastating. Entire squadrons of assembly and human ships vanished in crystalline fire. But for the first time in the war, the enemy's perfect coordination showed signs of strain. Their attack patterns, Ixel observed from her advisory station. They're becoming irregular. Chen allowed herself a grim smile. They're trying to adapt by mimicking our chaos. But you can't fake entropy. The battle reached its crescendo as the final wave of disruptors activated. The quantum interference patterns merged into a galaxy-spanning web of controlled chaos. The effect on the Hexadrite was immediate and spectacular. Their crystalline ships began to vibrate at conflicting frequencies. Some shattered outright, while others began firing at their own forces, their perfect coordination shattered by cascading quantum errors. Main crystalline fleet coherence at 30% and falling, Patil announced, her voice tight with excitement. The interference pattern is self-sustaining. But the Hexadrite had one final card to play. Their remaining ships began to merge, forming a massive crystalline structure that dwarfed even the largest assembly vessels. Its surface rippled with quantum energies as it attempted to re-establish control over its fragmented forces. All ships, execute final movement, Chen ordered. This was the riskiest part of the plan. Every ship in the combined fleet activated their modified gravity drives simultaneously, not to move, but to sing. The drives pulsed in carefully calculated patterns, turning the entire battlefield into an instrument of quantum discord. The massive crystalline structure shuddered. Cracks appeared in its perfect surface as conflicting quantum states propagated through its lattice. The Hexadrite tried to adapt, to impose their order on the chaos. But for once, chaos was winning. Structure reaching critical quantum destabilization, Patil reported. 10 seconds to catastrophic failure. All ships, emergency withdrawal, Chen ordered. Ride the shockwave. The combined fleet barely escaped as the crystalline structure imploded. The quantum backlash rippled through spacetime, catching the remaining Hexadrite ships in its wake. One by one, their perfect formations dissolved into crystalline dust. In the aftermath, the assembled fleet watched as the quantum interference pattern spread across the galaxy, carrying the song of chaos to every Hexadrite stronghold. Reports began flooding in. The enemy was retreating, their once perfect coordination shattered. We've given them the gift of imperfection, Ixel mused, watching the tactical displays. I wonder if they'll learn to appreciate it. If they don't, Chen replied, we'll be happy to teach them again. The victory wasn't complete. Some Hexadrite forces survived, retreating to unknown regions of space. But their perfect harmony was broken, their threat diminished. More importantly, the galaxy had learned a vital lesson about the strength found in imperfection. 1 year after Operation Dissonance, Earth hosted the first Galactic Evolution Summit. The Great Hall of the newly constructed Unity complex in Geneva was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Their diverse forms a testament to the power of imperfect adaptation. Admiral Chen, now serving as Earth's representative to the reformed Galactic Assembly, watched as Dr. Patil presented her findings on the remnants of Hexadrite technology. The crystalline beings hadn't been destroyed. That was never the goal. Instead, they had been transformed. The quantum interference patterns didn't just break their coherence, Patil explained, displaying holographic models of crystalline structures. They introduced the possibility of change. For the first time in their history, the Hexadrite are evolving. The evidence was clear in the long-range scans of former Hexadrite space. Their once uniform crystalline structures now showed variations, imperfections, even signs of individual development. Some had begun communicating with assembly outposts, their perfect harmony replaced by something more complex, but ultimately more meaningful: dialogue. High Chancellor Vexterra, her scales shimmering with colors of profound appreciation, addressed the gathered species. We sought humanity's help believing we needed warriors. Instead, they taught us something far more valuable: the strength found in imperfection. The changes weren't limited to the Hexadrite. Assembly species that had once prided themselves on their rigid adherence to tradition now experimented with hybrid technologies and adaptive strategies. The Quantum Collective, inspired by human music theory, had developed entirely new forms of consciousness based on controlled quantum discord. The galaxy is noisier now, Ixel observed, standing beside Chen at the summit's reception. More chaotic, more alive. The evidence was everywhere. Assembly ships now incorporated human-inspired random variables in their defense systems. Quantum communication networks included deliberate interference patterns to prevent crystallization. Even the architecture of the Unity complex itself featured asymmetrical elements that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Dr. James Chen, leading the new field of xenocultural evolution, presented his theory to the summit. Perfect systems cannot grow. It's our flaws, our accidents, our mistakes that drive innovation. The Hexadrites sought to impose perfect order on the galaxy. In doing so, they nearly stopped evolution itself. But humanity's influence extended beyond technology and tactics. Assembly species began exploring concepts they had long dismissed as primitive. Art, music, storytelling. The idea that truth could be found in fiction, that meaning could emerge from chaos, sparked a cultural revolution. We've detected signs of new crystal formation in Sector 7, a young human scientist reported during the technical sessions. But these structures, they're growing in fractal patterns we've never seen before. Some appear to be attempting to recreate Earth's natural formations, mountains, trees, even ocean waves. The Hexadrate remnants were learning, changing, creating. Their perfect crystalline cities now featured imperfect gardens. Their quantum networks embraced random variables as sources of inspiration rather than errors to be corrected. Admiral Chen's granddaughter, now walking and babbling in the peculiar way of human toddlers, had become a symbol to many assembly species. They watched in fascination as she learned through trial and error, each mistake leading to new understanding. The concept of growth through imperfection, so natural to humans, was revolutionizing galactic civilization. We did more than win a war, Chen reflected, watching various species attempt to interact with her granddaughter. We helped the galaxy remember how to live. The summit concluded with an unprecedented event, a concert combining assembly quantum harmonics with human jazz improvisation. The resulting music was neither perfect nor chaotic, but something new, a celebration of evolution itself. As the strange, beautiful notes filled the hall, Chen received an unexpected message. A hexadrite crystal, one of the first to develop individual consciousness, had requested permission to study at Earth's universities. It wanted to learn more about human art, about the beauty found in imperfection. The battle for survival is over, Vex Terra announced in her closing speech. Now begins a greater challenge, learning to grow, to change, to evolve. Humanity has shown us that the future belongs not to those who seek perfection, but to those who embrace the endless possibilities found in imperfection. Outside the Unity complex, Earth's night sky glowed with the lights of ships from across the galaxy. Among them, if one looked carefully, were crystalline vessels whose surfaces now rippled with subtle variations, their perfect geometry giving way to more organic patterns. The galaxy was changing, growing, evolving. And humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as too primitive for galactic society, was leading the way. Not through force or technological superiority, but through their greatest gift, the ability to find strength in imperfection, to create beauty from chaos, and to teach others to do the same. In the end, they had done more than save galactic civilization. They had helped it remember how to dream.